Which action camera is best? Is it the GoPro Hero 12 or the DJI Action 4? You've probably seen lots of comparison videos of these guys online, pixel peeping and going into sort of controlled testing, controlled scenarios. This isn't one of those videos. This is a real world experience video. I've taken both of these cameras on holiday and used them just how I normally would. Now both of these cameras are the same in a lot of ways, but one of them I definitely prefer the user experience of, and one of them I kind of prefer the image of. So let's start with what these guys have in common, and they've got a pretty similar feature set. You've got time lapses, photos, videos. You can change the different sort of focal lengths. So you can go from like an ultra wide or hyper view as it's called on here to a sort of more linear field of view. The GoPro actually films in 5.3K and the Action 4 films in 4K. Not that makes a huge amount of difference, but we'll get onto that in the image quality section. Obviously being industry leading action cameras, they've got the best stabilization on the market. I'm not going to talk too much about stabilization on this because honestly I think it's pretty similar at this point. And in terms of design, they actually look pretty similar. So you think you're sort of getting a similar experience out of both of them. But this is where they kind of part in my opinion. And that starts, in my opinion, with these back screens. Now the Action has a slightly larger back screen, but generally it's just a little bit higher quality in my opinion. It just looks nicer. It's a lot more responsive to the touch as well, whereas the GoPro sometimes doesn't respond all the time. I'm not sure whether that's to do with the screen or just software in general, but I definitely prefer the screen on the DJI Action 4. And the same is true on the flip side on the front screens. They look pretty similar at first glance, but the GoPro screen isn't touchscreen. Now, DJI has been doing this since the first generation of the Action, and in my opinion, it's a game changer in terms of user experience. Just being able to flip the screen around and then just change settings on the front on the fly if you want to change your resolution or frame rate. Whereas on the GoPro, you've sort of got to face yourself, oh no, I'm in the wrong settings, turn it back around, flip around, change what you want, and then come back around like this. It just makes so much sense, and I don't understand why GoPro haven't looked at this and implemented this yet. It's just such a strange thing for me. So yeah, big win for the Action 4 there as well. And the other thing which I actually really prefer on the Action 4 is their magnetic quick release system at the bottom. So I've got the magnetic quick release thing attached to this selfie stick here, and all I have to do to attach them together is just clip on just like that. And then when I want to release it, just take that off. I can go to another mount and just again clip that on like so. But the GoPro is still using this screw mount where you've sort of got to unfold the legs at the bottom, and then you've got to take the screw out of your mount, and then you've got to put these little legs in, line them up, put the screw in, and every time you want to change the mount that you're using for your action camera, you've got to then navigate this whole screw system, and frankly it's just quite annoying, to be honest now. And that's why I sort of defaulted a lot of the time to using the Action, because it was much easier to switch between different mounts, like this little clip that I've got, which is actually GoPro branded, and then this Action selfie stick as well. Just attach the little quick release system to each one, and you can easily go between them. A huge one up for user experience in my opinion for the Action there. It is worth noting though that the GoPro did put a tripod thread in the bottom of the Hero 12 this time, so that's a positive thing. It's a step up, but they do kind of need a quick release system now to keep up with DJI. And the last thing I want to mention about design is the quick switch button on the Action 4. This quick switch button is a lifesaver. So essentially what you can do is save your favorite modes as quick switch modes. So you can swipe through them like this on the back screen. But let's say you're in a position where you can't use the touch screen, or maybe the camera's wet or your hands are wet. All you have to do is click on this quick switch button and you can scroll through your modes like that. And that's a really clever way of controlling the camera and just changing between the modes that you use regularly. And I think that's something, again, that the Action 4 does much better. On the GoPro, there's actually no real quick switch button. So while you can save your favorite modes as sort of presets, you have to actually open the touchscreen. Again, not too responsive. And then you can scroll through your video presets. You can choose which one you want and you're sort of back in. But that's just not as quick, in my opinion, as using the button on here. And also, if you're sort of got your hands wet or the camera's wet, this doesn't work at all. So you're not gonna be able to switch your modes, which is a huge downside.
Is what you're doing?
I can't do anything. It's too wet.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like a lot of
I was recording a video, but I can't change it or do anything to it.
Also, I noticed in scenes with a lot of water, you'd see water droplets on the lens of the GoPro, whereas the DJI Action 4 never had this. That's because the Action 4 has the hydrophobic coating on the lens, which means the drops just slip right off, and it also has it on the front screen and the back screen. So overall, while these cameras might look the same, there's a lot of differences, and I just think the Action 4 has been much better thought through. It's much more modern, the front touchscreen, the magnetic quick release system, all those things made me default towards this camera while I was on holiday, just because it was easier to use and I wasn't having to think about it as much. Now, before I get into the user interface of these cameras, I want to talk about image quality, because it is quite important, but for me, it's not a deal breaker on these cameras, because both of these cameras do really well in most situations. In good lighting conditions, the image quality is very similar, with the GoPro Hero 12 having slightly more detail because of its higher megapixel count, and the DJI Action 4 being slightly over sharpened. But then put these cameras in a low light situation and the Action 4 destroys the Hero 12. The combination of a bigger sensor and less megapixels means the Action 4 is a lot less noisy. The Hero 12 just gets really muddy really quickly. I've put together some side-by-side content from the holidays I was on, so you can decide which one's best for you. But personally, I think it really comes down to your opinion and what sort of style you prefer. Here's my main takeaways from comparing them side by side though. I think the DJI goes for more of a realistic and contrasty look. Often the dynamic range is slightly better on the DJIs, I would say, especially when you're pointing directly at the sun. But the GoPro goes for a more vibrant and HDR kind of look, and I love the look that comes out of this camera. I kind of prefer it to the Action 4. The other thing is the DJI tends to over sharpen just a little bit, and you can really tell that in comparison videos with the GoPro. The GoPro just has that cinematic softness that comes straight out of camera, where it's not too sharpened but the detail's still there, and that's why I kind of prefer the look from the GoPro. However, in the GoPro's wide mode, there's some distortion which is quite noticeable in a lot of scenes, whereas if you go into standard dewarp on the DJI Action, it's just as wide as the GoPro's wide mode, but it's dewarped so you don't get those weird edges and that strange horizon going on. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button because it really helps with the algorithm. Also, it's worth noting on the Action 4, you can go into the settings and reduce the sharpness, which most people say is a better look, but you're still not going to get that detail that you get from the GoPro. Also, you can shoot in 10-bit log on both of these cameras. The log on the DJI Action 4 looks great. For some reason, the log on the GoPro just isn't as flat, so I'm not sure it's even worth shooting in log on the GoPro, but either way, both of these can do it. So let's quickly talk about the user interface, and I think DJI have smashed it out of the park with the interface. Honestly, it's so easy to use, the touchscreen's so responsive, and everything just works the exact way you'd expect it to do. I've been able to give this camera to friends and family. They can just pick it up and change settings, even in the pro modes. In comparison, the GoPro is just a lot more complicated to work with. Every time you want to change a setting, it's just a little bit harder. Again, you have to do it with a touchscreen rather than the quick switch button. Changing resolutions and frame rates and things just seems a lot harder than it should be, and a lot more complicated and convoluted than you would expect it to be from a camera this size. And I feel like that's maybe why they haven't decided to put the touchscreen on the front yet, because they haven't figured out how to make the user experience a bit better on it. As an example, just check out how long it takes to change the brightness on each camera. So on the DJI, all I have to do is swipe down, brightness, boom, it's done. Whereas on the GoPro, I have to swipe down, then I have to go over to the right into preferences, down to displays, and from there can go to brightness and turn the brightness up. Now, just something as simple as screen brightness has taken, a few seconds, 10 seconds to get into rather than the 1 second it took on the Action 4. But I think that's just sort of representative of how these two cameras are. Now, there are some situations where it's the opposite way around. For example, if you wanted to change the sort of lens or focal length on the GoPro, you just have a button on the screen there and you can just change it just like that. But if you want to change it on the Action, you do have to sort of go into the settings on the right, scroll down, click field of view, and then change it like that. So it does trade blows a little bit, but in general, I just found the Action just a lot simpler to use. But one thing I love about the GoPro is the fact that you can actually shoot in 8x7. So it's got an almost square sensor. So you can shoot in that sort of square format, and afterwards you can crop it to vertical or landscape. And I think in this day and age where you're having to crop things to different formats, and even when I'm going on holiday and stuff and I want to crop something for Instagram, this square format is going to be really useful for me. And I've mentioned this before in action camera reviews, but I love the fact that in GoPro you can go over to linear mode. So in the sort of field of views here, you can go from hyper view all the way to linear. And linear is a kind of more natural field of view for me. So if you don't want that sort of action camera look, you can go into linear mode. It's a bit more straightforward, a bit more like an iPhone camera, for example. Whereas on the Action, the sort of tightest you can go is their standard D-warp, which is still quite wide in my opinion. You can actually go into 2.7K on the Action and then change it to a field of view called narrow, which is pretty much the same thing, but for some reason you have to go down to 2.7K to do that. And I guess that's probably a limitation of the sensor. And I'm sure I've missed some stuff out along the road, but the last thing I want to talk about is the battery life. And that again is much better in my opinion on the Action 4. Now you can see some proper spec comparisons on other videos in terms of how long it lasts in 4K 25 or 4K 50. All I can tell you is that I took these two cameras out, filmed the same amount with both of them, and I was constantly having to change the GoPro battery, even though it's one of their new, I don't know whether it's still called an Enduro battery, but one of the white ones anyway, that came with the GoPro 12. I still think the Action 4 batteries are better in terms of how long it can record for. And also it comes with this charging case as well that you can put the batteries in. The batteries charge faster on the Action 4 as well, so you're ready to go quicker. And this is just something which has been a really nice user experience improvement on the Action 4. Again, not a massive deal breaker for the GoPro, just means you'll have to take a couple of extra batteries on your journey. Now, I'll tell you which one I prefer in a minute, but I'm about to do that YouTube thing with comparisons and tell you that you'll be happy with either of these cameras. And that's because it's so true. They're both really capable cameras, and no matter which one you go out and buy, I reckon you're going to be happy with it. But they do have some things, obviously, that they do better than the other. These are the reasons that I would pick the DJI. It's obviously got the magnetic quick release system, just easy to switch between different mounts. The front touchscreen so that you can change settings from the front. It's got slightly better log footage, it's better in low light, and it's just easy to use. But in terms of the Hero 12, I see two major benefits over the Action 4. The image quality and detail is better in good lighting than the Action 4, just because of that higher megapixel sensor. And of course, if you wanted to invest in the Max mod for the GoPro as well, that could add some features. So for me then, the benefits of the Action 4 far outweigh the benefits of the Hero 12. But I do prefer the colors and the image from the GoPro just a little bit more. But obviously when you're out and about on holiday and filming memories and stuff like that, the colors aren't really something that you notice all of that much, as long as you're capturing what you want to capture and you're in the moment. So for me, I think I'm going to default to taking out the Action 4, and that comes a lot down to the usability, the user interface, how simple and easy it is to use, and the fact that I can pretty much stay in the moment while I'm filming. Whereas the GoPro, while it has a lot going for it, it's just a little bit too complicated to use while you're away. No quick switch modes, no front touchscreen, no quick release systems. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful to you guys. Both of these are really good cameras. Let me know in the comments section down below which one you're choosing. If it's been helpful, hit the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more videos like this on Tech for Creatives, then hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.